been particularly fascinating and has offered a unique perspective with a background in project management and extensive experience in decision dynamics consulting with executives. He definitely brings a deep understanding of organizational needs and human motivations. His additional expertise in audio engineering, something that's really cool, and I like that, and production aligns perfectly with SSC, focusing on technology and audio industries. So let's give Eddie a round of applause for joining us today. Eddie, first thing I always like to start out, let's pretend that you are a Marvel superhero. Give us your origin story. Tell us about you and how did you get here, brother?
Oh, I mean, it's not going to be as spectacular as any Marvel superhero, but really, I started here. I mean, I kind of fell into it because my dad's a veteran. My dad and my grandfather are both veterans. My dad was in Vietnam in the Navy. But after that, he went on and he started a company called Decision Dynamics, which you briefly mentioned there. And Decision Dynamics, they create personality assessments, which I'm sure a lot of people here have taken. And these personality assessments kind of reveal what we call decision styles, which were your modes of thinking and making decisions. Um, so I worked there for a bit, grew up with that my whole life. And the decision styles assessments are used a lot in recruiting as well. So it kind of just all, fell into place that way. Grew up in it, been around it all the time. I had a colleague of mine who started working at Security Search and Consulting, and that's where I ended up and where I'm at now.
Fantastic. Given your background in project management, decision dynamics and everything, what was your motivation transition into recruiting?
Um, I enjoyed that aspect of it a lot, the recruiting. I enjoyed the working with people, and it's, to be blunt, to be frank, there's a lot of money in it. If you do it right, there's like you can earn a pretty penny. So that was appealing. It's also, as far as sales goes, I did real estate for a little bit too, which isn't on there. It's, real estate sales is very tough. Recruiting is a much different animal. You're doing sales, but you're really working with people. You're connecting people, and that's really enjoyable. And you're not trying to sell somebody on something. You're connecting people, you're helping them find a job. Everybody wants a job. Everybody wants to talk to you for the most part. Every now and then you get someone who's annoyed, but for the most part, everyone wants to speak with you and you to help them get a better job. And then on the flip side, the companies, everyone's looking for a good employee. So it's very enjoyable in that way. When you do the job right, you get a lot of kudos and you get a lot of I get a lot of people this week. I had several people telling me that it was a really enjoyable experience working with me and thanked me for advocating for them and putting in a lot of work to help them get a job. So that feels good.
I've been headhunted in the past and I've worked with contract recruiters and everyone above. It definitely does give you a warm and fuzzy feeling on the inside for sure.
Yeah.
When someone, digging through your LinkedIn sits there and says, hey, I have a role for you, be interested. Here's the breakdown on it, everything like that. So you definitely like to bring in that psychological, the human dynamic aspects to it, which is definitely something that I don't see a lot of recruiters doing. What makes you unique in that situation? Are you really trying to read between the lines and understanding their personalities and behaviors when you're trying to go after a candidate? Or are you just like point A, point B, let's see what we can make out of the math?
I think I'm really trying to understand the person, and I think that goes kind of, it might fall back to my experience at Decision Dynamics, where we really look at how people are thinking and making their decisions. And I find that in order, I mean, it's very short-sighted to just be trying to get someone from point A to point B. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
you are, this business is all about relationships. If you are just trying to get someone from point A to point B, you're probably not going to get a lot of repeat business off of that. Also, frankly, you need to understand the person in order to place them at the appropriate job, and in order for the to know if they're going to be a good fit. Um, and then I just a personality thing. I just think I enjoy getting to know these people. And everyone wants to, you hear it all the time, but people want to work with people that they like. And I like to get to know these people, and then it makes me motivated to try to help them out here. If I have somebody that's just kind of, maybe they're good on paper, but personality wise, they're not that interesting, then I'm not going to be that motivated to work with them. And on the flip
Definitely.
side, I'm sure they feel the same way about me. I've asked people that, when they've said something positive about the recruiting experience, I've asked them on the flip side what hasn't been a good experience for them with other people, and it's that they're trying to get them from point A to point B.
I like it. That's definitely solid for sure. There are a lot of recruiters out there that think the point A to point B. I come from the SaaS space.
Mm.
And I have really hammered into a lot of the talent acquisition people, the recruiters I've worked with. It's like you can't just read a piece of paper and just fill the quota. The last organization I was with, they were doing that a lot, and it led to a lot of disasters. So it's like you got to make sure that you have that capability. So tell us about the segment that you're recruiting in right now. Like, what sort of roles are you looking for? What sort of capabilities and personalities that you're looking to fill with those slots that you have positions open for?
Yeah, so we're working with the company I'm at now. We do securities and fire protection. So when I say fire protection, that's my main purview. When I say fire protection, I'm not talking about, a lot of people think firefighting, and that's not what that is. Fire protection, if anyone's in like sitting there watching right now and then they're in a commercial space, you could probably look up and you'll see the fire sprinklers. So you have the sprinkler system, suppression systems. On the flip side, you have the fire alarm systems. If you think when someone pulls the fire alarm in a building, that's a very basic one. Um, I didn't give much thought to this world until I joined the recruiting company and started working in this world. But it's pretty interesting. There's a lot of depth to it. One of the greatest things is it's incredibly stable. It's recession proof. So every building needs to have fire protection in it of some sort. And then in certain regions, it's enforced more and more. So, recession comes, you don't need the fancy stuff, but you have to get your fire protection and you have to get your fire alarm systems in. So that's one of the great things about it. We're working with a lot of technicians. So a technician can be someone that's coming in and pulling the wire, installing things. It can be someone who's programming the fire alarm systems. Use a laptop and you come in and you actually program the systems. And then also looking for people that have project management experience. Their handling budgets is oftentimes a requirement there. Some of these companies will teach that as well. And then up to every level of management above that, service managers, operations managers, branch managers. But technicians are always needed. Um,
Yeah,
Technicians are one of the hardest positions to fill because they're needed so badly.
it's the same. So I'm in Colorado, and we have the same problem with wind turbines. Nobody wants to go do it, but people don't realize that it's $180,000 a year, and you're really only
Yeah.
working 40 hours a week. And it's there. And with fire suppression, I don't know like all the codes across the country. I dabbled in commercial construction for a little bit, but anything more than 4,500 square feet in most places, you got to have some sort of fire suppression system. So when
Yeah.
Eddie says that it is recession proof, I know that there's people out there sitting there trying to chase the dream of software and tech and everything like that. This is a great way to make a hell of a lot of money very, very, very quickly for anyone out there who's looking for something that's a very solid skill bridge opportunity. Now, someone with a military background, like we got here, the 400 plus people here, what would give them the leg up in something that you're trying to recruit for? What would give them that sort of like it factor?
That's a good question. Obviously, if someone comes in and they were in a part of the military where they had some type of engineering experience, maybe they had a mechanic background or just anything in engineering, that would be huge. Um, Frankly, a lot of these companies are looking for people that have some experience in the industry. That's just the truth of it. But for a lot of these entry level positions, anyone that has mechanical experience at all is huge. Anyone that has, like I said, engineering experience, and then on top of that, these soft skills of just learning how to communicate. So if someone comes in, they are personable. They have leadership experience, which I know a lot of roles in the military, you'll have leadership experience. You're able to take instructions very well. All of these things are hugely beneficial. Um, but yeah, really anyone with mechanical and engineering experience, those would be the big ones.
Yeah, there was, let's see here, when I was doing mentorship, there was a young kid who I was talking to, and he was an HVAC technician in the Marine Corps. And he had a lot of skills. I wish he was here today because he would be absolutely, someone who would love to pick your brain on a lot of this stuff. Before I have any more questions, does anybody here have any questions for Eddie? Not everyone jump up at once. This is a quiet crew. They were pretty quiet yesterday when I was facilitating. Okay, look at that. All right, Nicholas, I saw you first, and then Brian, you're second. So, Nicholas, go ahead, sir.
So, Eddie, I'm transitioning out of Air Force after 9 years. Well, 22 years, but 9 years in like recruiting talent acquisitions. How
Uh,
do I get into that role with the experience from the lower level of selling the individual to join the Air Force, from managing my people? Like, how do you get in that realm?
but are you talking about getting into the recruiting world in the civilian
Yes.
space?
Mhm.
I mean, it's kind of just a boring answer, but I would find a recruiting company and just reach out to them. A lot of these recruiting companies, they don't even require experience, frankly. And the fact that you have experience, you said 9 years of doing that in the
Mhm.
military.
Mhm.
I mean, that I'm sure that any company looking at you would. Companies appreciate veterans a lot. And I think it shows a lot of discipline and experience. And then also the fact that you just have experience doing that and talking to people about that. I think you'd probably be a shoe in for a lot of these companies that you speak with. Um, and like I said earlier, you can make a pretty penny doing that. So if you're interested in doing that, you can also always, reach out to me and get a bit more information on that. But if you're interested in doing that, just find some companies and reach out, and you probably have a leg up more than most people applying.
Yeah, thank you.
Great question. Brian, go ahead, sir.
Additionally, sorry,
Oh,
real quick. Additionally, you can always reach out to recruiters themselves, or if they hit you up on LinkedIn, it's never unless if they're charging you, it's something funky going on. Usually because a recruiter, whenever you work with them, it's coming out of the company hiring. It's coming out of their pocket. It's not your pocket. So if you just have any questions or want help or industry knowledge, a good recruiter will help you out with that, and it's at no charge to yourself.
love that follow up 100%. Brian, my apologies. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, hey, how you doing, Eddie?
Hey,
I just had so you do recruiting. Which company do you work for?
security search and consulting.
Okay. And then I'm probably gonna try to reach out to you on LinkedIn if I'm
Okay.
sure you're on there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that fire protection like technician, I think I would love. I'm really interested in that. So,
Okay.
but I have no idea. I'm stepping out of the military realm, so I don't know what companies have those types of positions. It's kind of like stepping into a dark closet.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I'd love to pick your brain sometime about I
For
guess,
sure.
job fields that are related to stuff like that. Because I'm more of like a hands-on techie kind of guy, but I also have the project management background.
Okay, I'm posting my LinkedIn here. Yeah, reach out to me, and we can discuss it more. It's a big world of fire protection out there. You know, there's a lot of multi-billion dollar companies. There's a lot of mid-sized companies. Like I said, it's a pretty thriving industry that I didn't even know about before this. Um, and I do want to say, as well as the technician side of things, there's also design engineer roles. So if you'd rather just be in the office or something, you know, there's that route to go down. Um, one note here, I don't want to get too off topic, but I just want to impress also, just from my perspective as a recruiter, when you're writing your resumes, one of the main things that companies look at, and a lot of you won't have this right now, but it's something to really think about when you're making your next step, and then when you're in these industries. Certificates are huge. Certificates like are enormous. You know, in my world, there's something called the NICET. It's a National Institute. Uh, I always just call it a NICET. I forget what the acronym actually means, but it's an engineering certificate. That, and I know in other industries as well, other big certificates, those are huge, and they'll propel you to the next level in pay as well, and just make you stand out immensely. So no matter what world you end up entering in, check out different certificate programs. And if you're interested in fire protection, or anything in engineering, really, up NICETs, NICET, and look up the process for getting one of those, because that will make you stand out among all of your peers, and you'll be able to get, you know, if we're talking a $25 an hour job, that'll become a $35 an hour job. So,
That's actually something great call out there, Eddie. We had trying to remember, we had somebody a couple of weeks ago in Connections, and he said exactly the same thing, that college degrees are good, you know, professional certifications are great. These individual certifications are really the butter to the bread to sit there and make things happen for you to elevate that career. So, like for me, for everyone who's out there, I came out of the Army. Yeah, I had my college degree and everything, but I also had these pile of HR certificates and learning and development certificates and all this other stuff. They had no idea what to do for it, and companies were just sitting there, just casting that net and loving it 100%.
yeah.
Walk me through, Eddie, your day in the life. What does your position, you know, what's your workflow on a daily basis?
So, you know, a lot of the day is doing, frankly, the pretty boring stuff of actually trying to, you know, I guess some people will find this interesting. But, you know, to me, it's the most boring part, actually trying to find the people that I want to talk to. And then, you know, we have at our company a system full of, we've been around for a while, so we have a system full of resumes and people that we've maybe worked with in the past or sourced somehow. And then it's just finding the right people to call, and then just making those calls. That's the boring part, and that takes up most of the day. And so it's making those calls until I find someone that you know, will pick up the phone and talk to me. And then it's what we call an intake call, where I speak to them about their background. I speak to them about, as a recruiter, you know, pay is a big thing, but the biggest thing I'm interested in is their pain points. It's why would you be interested in leaving your company? And if it's only pay, yeah, that's still a factor, but it's not as motivating. If it's something like they're unhappy with the how they're being managed, they're unhappy with the culture of the company, that's a bigger deal. So I'll speak to someone there. I'll, you know, do an intake call. And then I'll also talk to my clients, who are the companies, and I'll speak to them about the different roles that they need to fill. If I've already spoken to them and I'm clear on what they need to fill, then I'll speak to them about the candidates that I have that I want to send over to them. And that's a standard day. And then on the days where I'm then setting up interviews, I'll be setting up interviews with my candidates. It's just a lot of back and forth, scheduling people's times. All that is pretty straightforward and pretty easy. Then the only difficulty really comes in when I have a candidate and a client whose expectations are different. You know, maybe the client doesn't want to pay as much as the candidate is looking for. Then, you know,
Ooh,
you get
yeah.
into a bit more of a interesting negotiations there. But it really is just it's not the hard part is the grind of making all the calls and finding the people. Everything else is kind of just talking and communicating, you know, and being transparent. I'm a big advocate for transparency in sales. I think it helps a lot.
That's the biggest thing for anyone here who's looking to do a sales role. That is something that's super important, is that you could have the greatest product in the world, but if you're not transparent with somebody about anything within the process, it does come back and bite you in your rear end. Andrew, go ahead, sir.
Hey, hey, Eddie, thanks for joining us today. You're absolutely not in my field. I'm not interested. I'm interested in what you're doing, but I'm just not going that path.
Understood.
But you talked about the recruiting portion as far as what you get on LinkedIn, and I have a LinkedIn account, and I appreciate your sentiments on as far as recruiters go. That was definitely beneficial, and it's worth listening to your time here today. But you talked about certificates as well, and I'm in Allegiant Vets, and much of the coursework that we're doing is on Coursera and project management. So where would you rate Coursera certificates in relation to the certificates that you have mentioned earlier? Thanks.
It's yeah, thanks for your question. It's tough because Coursera has a lot of different stuff on there. I know, and a lot of different organizations. I don't know if I'm the best person to ask about that. However, I do know from my own experience looking on there that they have, you know, Google has some certificates on there, and I'm sure that Google's certificates will hold a decent amount of weight. A lot of the certificates that I'm talking about are kind of nationally recognized. My dog might start. I might have to put my dog in here. He's gonna run up and down the fence with the other dog right now and make a lot of noise. Here, hold on. Sorry, one sec.
No, I have my dog behind me too, so I understand.
All we had to do is say dog, and now my dog is sounding off. You know?
That's right. That's how it works, right?
Yeah, exactly. You know, we could be all the way across the country.
No, he's not in the field. A great presentation. I didn't know if he would have anything. Well, he's back now, but
Apologize for that.
no. A great way of. I like the genuineness of what you said, and I don't care where you're from. It relates to everybody. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I guess I just continue on what I was saying with the certificates. A lot of the certificates that what would be the best way of finding out what certificates hold weight in your field? What field are you in?
So I'm in maintenance. I'm in
Uh-huh.
vehicle management, vehicle maintenance, looking to go into finished carpentry, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I'm going through the Coursera stuff on project management. It's not my cup of tea, but I understand it. I can apply it to anything, but a lot of us in Allegiant Vets are doing, whether it's HR or whatever track you're on,
Mhm.
we're just trying to navigate through this. And honestly, some of what we're doing, I'm like, you want me to populate a spreadsheet and
Yep.
name tabs? Like, we're all at a point where we can do this, at least how I feel in life. But and we're just going through the motions, and we want to add value to what we're doing and take advantage of this great program we're in and getting to talk to and listen to folks like you. So, as somebody as successful as you are, we just want to see what matters. I think
Yeah.
Jason just said the same thing.
Yeah. You know, unfortunately, I don't know if I can answer that well for that field. The certificates that I'm talking about are, so they're usually nationally recognized certificates. The NICET program is a nationally recognized institute. There are also in my field certificates for specific fire alarm systems. So if you know they show that somebody has taken a course to use a certain type of proprietary fire alarm system. As far as project management goes, you know, I don't know. I don't know what else is really out there. I do think that the project management course at Coursera would not hurt to have. Whether it's going to be the best bang for your buck and the best use of your time, I don't have an answer for that. I know as far as it's not project management, but for anyone out there, as far as coaching certificates, there's an organization called ICF, International Coaching Federation or Foundation Federation, I think.
Federation,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, they're very, for anyone looking to go into the consulting and coaching world, they're a good resource there. They're internationally recognized. Project management, you know, one of the main things that I would be concerned about, and again, this might just be in my field, but I know a lot of project managers, the difference between a project manager and, again, in my field, like a field project manager or a foreman, is that project managers handle some budgetary, they handle budget on projects, so they handle profit and loss. So I would make sure that whatever you're doing probably tackles some of that. Um, I hope that was helpful. I don't really have a great answer for you, so I apologize for that.
No, that's definitely something that with the people who I mentor here, I am exactly the same way, is that you get the narrow focus, you know, like the foreman one, like you just mentioned, and then like something that's more in lines of like a PMP, to where you're looking at the numbers and developing the budgets and the timelines and everything. That is vitally important. So that is a great thing to say to everyone here in terms of that feedback. And I do want to compliment Jerry for what you said in the chat, is that one certificate here, whether it be Coursera or anything like that, can springboard you to other certificates as well. And Jerry, great call out, because that's how I actually got my SPHR, was exactly that right there. So in terms of, you know, hiring processes and everything like that, Eddie, what are common red flags that you see on resumes, particularly if you see someone who's like a veteran?
Um,
What are some things that you get nervous about when you're looking at those resumes?
this this might, well, let me just, the Coursera stuff, just you know, I want to emphasize too what Ralph said. It really is like, it's a good starting point, you know, unless you are really don't have the time for it and you need to be absolutely sure that what you're doing is gonna pay off. I would get the Coursera done because it's better than nothing. It's going to show that you've taken the initiative to do it. Um, it will show that you have some type of knowledge about project management. And again, frankly, one of the biggest things, then going into the next part, one of the biggest things that people look at on resumes, your cover letter, it's important, you know, just a paragraph, just introducing who you are. But really, the way that people read resumes, just the honest truth is it's very bullet pointy, and people just read, you know, the bullet points of the resume. So yeah, just big red flags. The biggest red flag, and this might not apply really to veterans come, I mean, this won't apply, I don't think, to veterans coming out of the military. So, but I'll say it anyway. Tenure is a big one. If someone is jumping around from job to job, that's the biggest red flag. If someone is a year here, a year here, a year here, or they're, you know, a year here, 2 years here, whatever it may be, like just those short job hops, that's a big red flag. Um, you know, I think that's really, as far as red flags go, that's really the only one I can think about. There's other things that just won't be. Everything else falls into the category of things that are appealing to see on a resume. But that's the only big red flag that I can think of off the top of my head is just tenure.
And I find that interesting because coming from the SaaS space, there are a lot of resumes out there that I see that actually there are like 1 year, 2 years, everything like that
Yeah.
because it's just it's 100 times faster than anything else. So I do find that fascinating that is something you are looking at.
It's
Mr.
context.
Nixon. Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, just responding to that, there is, it's not so black and white, but it is something that will then come up in if I talk to a client and they're going to ask about that. They're going to say why was he jumping around so much? What that and big gaps in job history. So
Understood. Chad Nixon, go ahead, sir. You had your hand up.
Hey, thank you. So I've been a career public affairs officer, and I don't have a lot of certifications, but I have a lot of specialty schools, which they translate to college credits and things like that. Some are 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 5 weeks. I know I get a certificate of completion, but I don't have a certification. So the first thing I've done is I used AI to help me explain in a civilian term what I learned in those specialty schools, but how else, besides just putting a title in my education block on my resume, how would you explain, hey, I don't have a certificate, but I've got this 5 week class that's, 40 hours a week above my regular training. Like, how should I translate that?
I mean, in resume speak, it's a bit it just being concise with it. The honest truth is that you're not going to be able to do a big blurb on that. I guess, as we're talking about this, another red flag. You don't want your resume to be super long and really extremely wordy. So I would just put that there, and maybe, I hope I'm understanding what you're saying, but I would just put the title of that course, or what that was, and then a very brief description underneath it, or next to it in parentheses, or underneath it in a bullet point of just very briefly explaining, in maybe a sentence, maybe two at the very most, of what that was. I hope that answered your question a bit. Resumes are tough. They're tough because people do read them in kind of black and white ways, and they're looking for very specific things. You know, in my world, anyone going into any of these fields, I would suggest just getting something going on your resume as soon as you can. It'll help a lot. And then, even if it's not a career that you're going to stay in for a really long time, it just getting that experience there, and then maybe getting some certifications is huge.
And then follow-up question, do you agree with my concept of having like a one pager that goes into detail whenever I actually go to the interview to like kind of give some background, or you think it's unnecessary?
A separate one pager?
Yes, sir. Like when I actually show up to the interview, be like, hey, I've got these skills, hand them a piece of paper. This gives you kind of background of the additional training that I've had.
That's great. I mean,
okay.
Like, even if they just look at the paper and then they set it aside and they don't look at it any further, it shows your initiative, and it shows that you're taking it seriously. I know there's a few questions here, but real quick on that note, just general interview advice. Be well dressed, of course. I mean, I know it sounds like obvious, and probably for all of you coming out of the military, that's very obvious, but you'd be surprised. I have a colleague who showed up to an interview with cigarettes at the end of his, not that would be any of you guys, but cigarettes at the end of his beard, and then he said he wouldn't dress up for any man. So, bit of a character there, but well dressed.
What? Hold
yeah.
on. What?
Yeah.
Wow.
I know, a real character. So he won't dress up for any man, and he won't get a job from anyone either with that. So cigarettes at the end there, but well dressed. And then usually we advise don't talk about money too much in the first interview. The first interview is exploratory. That can come later. And then also a big one, get them talking more than you're talking. You know, a lot of studies show if they're talking more than you are, they're more likely to hire you. So by doing that, or in order to do that, you know, I'd show a lot of interest, ask a lot of questions. You know, if they're asking more questions, if they're speaking more than you are, it's kind of like you're interviewing them. And you know, the more that they talk, the more likely they'll be able to the more likely they'll hire you.
Does that make sense, everyone? It's a two-way street. You're not just getting interviewed yourself. You can figure it out very quickly if you're interviewing them as well. So I do want to read one of the questions from the chat. Then Andrew, I will get to you. Then Boris, you'll be the third. So how do you determine someone that is chasing money versus running from something or leaving an organization because they're a problem? How have you had any experience trying to read between those lines, Eddie, at all?
Yeah, I mean that just from a recruiter standpoint, that just comes up in conversation. Um, and chasing the money, it's not exactly a red flag, but it is something that it's not exactly appealing to someone that's interviewing if they feel like you're just chasing the money. But again, it's not like it's not a big red flag. And what the rest of the question, chasing the money versus running from something or leaving an organization because they're the problem. Man, there's no real straightforward answer about this. It is just something that kind of comes up in conversation. You know, if someone's making a lot of excuses about things, especially if it's one company, it may be a bit harder to determine if it's really them or the company. If they have a history of a lot of different companies and, you know, there's always something that they're talking about, you know, they're always complaining about something, it's most likely them. It could just be that they've been really unlucky and they've been in like a lot of bad situations, but you know, I'm sure that you guys have experienced this a lot. If someone's constantly complaining about something, it's usually them. So
Make sense to everyone? It's like, you know, you got that stubborn E4 that doesn't want to do anything, doesn't want to promote or anything. Yep, and everyone just understood exactly what I just said. You know, it's like they don't want to go to board for E5. But Andrew, go ahead, sir.
So, hey, Eddie, you being genuine in your answers has sparked me to ask this question. I've recently went through an interview with a power company in Ohio, and the interview was going great until the last question, and they asked me a stakeholder question that nobody would know the answer to unless you were in the company. So I knew that told me I was competing against somebody from within. And I'm not going to go into the dives of the question because it's not important. But how do we compete against somebody internally when they're asking specifically in this interview a question that I wouldn't have an answer to unless I was internal? You know what I mean? Everything in this interview was going great. I mean, I was nailing it until they asked me a specific stakeholder question. And it's like, in my mind, not verbally, you know, I put my cigarette down and extinguished it kind of thing. But how do you compete with somebody internally when you don't have the ins and outs of the company? And I know it's a hard question, but you being genuine with your responses has provoked me to ask this.
I mean, I have two thoughts. The first one is the unfortunate truth that it might just be that they have already, you know, made up their mind on the fact that they're hiring someone from within. They might already have somebody that they you might have been sabotaged from the beginning, you know. And I know that it's a shitty answer to hear and not exactly helpful, but it is the truth of it that, you know, there will be companies where they've already made up their mind. They already have somebody, you know, that they're going to hire. So It almost sounds like it's that type of situation if they're asking you a question that like is kind of unfair and that you're not going to have the answer to. It might have been that they've already made up their mind and they are just required to go and interview people on the outside. The second thing, and again, I wish I had a more direct answer for you here, but I would just you'd have to get, without knowing the specifics of the question, you'd have to get pretty creative with it, and I'd ask more questions about. I'd flip it on them in a way in which you're asking them questions about the situation. I'd get as much information about it as you can, and they might not be expecting you to actually have an answer there, so just get as much information on it as you can, and then be creative with it. Again, kind of a not a thrilling answer, but that's my answer here.
No, you just reaffirmed what I thought was happening. I figured by then, like, all right, you got somebody internal that you want to hire, and thanks for playing, kind of thing. So, again, thanks for your time.
Yeah.
That was a really good question. I do like that. Boris in the chat, how and where do degrees play into being considered for a job? Can a higher level of education disqualify a person? Do we need to put all of our education, or target the resume and the degree that applies to the role?
Yeah, I'm just reading the question again just to make sure I'm
Yeah,
understanding.
it's a little wordy.
On target resume.
So Boris, correct me if I'm wrong. So what you're worried about is if you have a higher level degree and you're trying to make the appearance that you might be a little bit overqualified. Is that what you're trying to get to on that?
I wouldn't.
I think.
Oh, go on.
Sorry. You put a high emphasis on certifications, and like I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, degrees was what everybody was chasing, right? Like I spent 12 years not chasing, but it was just in my time, and like it was allotted for me to get education. It seems like college degrees are kind of less and less looked at anymore.
It depends. I'm talking about in the fire protection world. And I've been talking admittedly a lot about technicians in this. But if you're going for a design job right out the gate, a degree in, engineering is going to be huge. If you are right out of the gate trying to get a good job, and I'm sure, if there's people in software here, then the degrees might matter more. Degrees, I don't think that they do. Again, it's field dependent, completely, but I don't think that they matter as much as they used to in a lot of ways. Obviously, especially if you don't have experience, it's great to have the degrees and it'll help you a lot. But I'll say it'll help you more than it would if you didn't have it. But I think the main thing that people are looking for in my field specifically, is having like certifications and some type of job experience. It's also tricky because I'm working with a lot of the candidates I'm working with, they're not entry level. So I'm talking about, when people are looking for type of experienced candidates, the college stuff doesn't really matter at all. But as far as putting all of your education on a targeted resume, I don't know exactly what you mean by all. I don't know how many like different types, but your most recent, as in, if you have a college degree or something, your most recent educational experience is just all you should really put on the resume.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So not to take away from Eddie's win, but like, for example, I have an MBA from the University of Denver, guys. I don't throw that really on my resume unless it's a high level position. I mostly focus on my undergrad, which is behavioral psychology, and the master's in science I'm working on right now, which is behavioral economics. But Sean, yeah, hop off and go take care of that. That's important. Does anybody else have any other questions? I got a few wrap-up questions for Eddie, but if you have Matthew, go ahead, sir.
Hey, Eddie, thanks for your time and taking my question.
Yeah, of course.
So I was just wondering maybe if you could give some insight on like, you know, I'm trying to finish my master's degree, but I also want to put myself out there and, apply to some jobs. Um, Looking at completing my master's within the 6 month window. So, if I go in for an interview, how would I what would you recommend be the best way to kind of like articulate that to the hiring professional? Like, hey, I can't start for maybe another 6 months because I'm working on my master's, but I really want to work for your company.
What field is it again?
IT.
I mean, that's going to be tricky. I don't know. You wouldn't want to work while you're completing your master's?
I mean, yeah, it's definitely an option. I'm exploring all options, but like at this current point in my transition, my career, if they were like, okay, yeah, great, you're a perfect fit for the company, you can start tomorrow, I'd be like,
Yeah.
well, hold on, I got a bunch of other stuff that I'm trying to do as well. So like, I don't know how to like put myself in that position, but also, be honest and candid with the hiring manager,
Yeah.
hiring
I
professional.
mean, what people are adding in the chat is good. But you know, it might be a bit of a waste of your time if you go in there and you say, I like to work with your company, but I'm not going to be able to work for you for another 6 months. You could just maybe do that on LinkedIn, and reach out to them that way, or via phone. What I should emphasize as well, phone call. Like a lot of people are afraid of the phone, but make calls to these companies, like find their information and like make a call and ask them any questions and introduce yourself that way. That does go a long way. And I think it's not completely, I think it's useful to just I'm kind of backtracking on what I said a little bit. I think if you told them, that I'd like to work with your company, but I'm not ready for another 6 months, there's some usefulness to that. It shows that it gets you in front of them. It shows that you're interested, and then letting them know that you are getting your degree. But I don't know. Um, I don't know if it's going to do you a whole lot of good. They might be a bit. Uh, they might be a bit frustrated if you go in there for a full interview and then you say, hey, I can't work for another 6 months. 2 months is one thing, 1 month is one thing, but 6 months is a good chunk of time.
Yeah. Thanks. I appreciate your insight on that.
Well, Steven is saying something that's kind of contradicting what I said. So, I mean, I don't think there's any like cut and dry answer that I can give you. If Steven's real world experience is contradicting that, um, then I would go ahead and do it. I don't think there's any like big downside to it.
Yeah, it's all going to really depend on what sort of, impression you left on them. I've seen it. I hired a kid to be an account manager with my last company, and he was doing the same thing, and he 1000%. I'm like, 6 months out, call me. We'll figure it out 1000%. And he now is trying to follow me to come over here. Steven, you're in the chat and now you got your hand raised. I like it. Go ahead, sir. What do you got?
I just wanted to touch on what I put in the chat there, and kind of what Eddie commented. So I had an interview with the company last week. Been working back and forth with their HR department trying to figure out, when they can bring me in with being a part of the skill bridge and stuff like that. They're apprehensive to bring me in as an unpaid intern because it's an aerospace company and they don't want me to have kind of unfettered access to their systems without having me on as a full-time employee. Got a call today from what will eventually be my supervisor, and he was like, hey, listen, you came in, you interviewed, you killed the interview, you answered the questions right. I think you're the right fit for the company. The company seems like the right fit for you. We're willing to wait for you to get the right person on the team at the right time. So I mean, it's still, it's December, right? So it's still that like 3-month window. But I want everybody that's in here that either read that or heard what Eddie was replying to me. Don't be
Yeah.
scared to reach out and put in your applications, send your resumes. The worst thing that can happen is like, hey, we're ready to offer you right now. And you're like, well, I can't start for 6 months. And they say, well, we can't wait that long. We have to go with somebody else. You can then have the confidence to know that at least for that job, you were the right candidate, just wasn't the right time, right? And use
Yeah.
it as a building block to build some confidence for the next interview or the next job.
Yeah, timing is everything. You know, I think kind of just going back on what I said a little bit completely, I would just do it. I would get in front of them as soon as you can. Um, you know, like Steven was saying, the worst thing is that they say, "Oh, we can't wait that long," and then you know that you need to go and look for something sooner. Because then that 6 months would come around and you'd be like, okay, now I'm going to apply to them, and they'd be like, oh, we've already filled that position. So I would just get yourself in front of them as soon as you can. So backtracking on what I said, but I do agree with Steven's sentiment there. Yeah. I have to. I believe it was until 11:45. I got to get going in
Yeah,
just a minute.
absolutely. Eddie, thank you very much for your time. We do greatly
Yeah.
appreciate it. I'll definitely be following up with you. Thank you, everyone, for participating. I am going to be jumping off myself, but continue to do what you're doing, everyone, and I will catch you all later. Eddie, thank you, sir.
Thank you. And just, I
Jimmy,
don't know if people can hear me still. Don't hesitate.